So I'm going to start by sharing my screen with you guys. I'll kind of do my formal introduction here in a moment, but what we're going to be looking at today is this handout sheet that I had emailed everybody over the past couple of days. And our agenda is going to be over here. First, we're going to start by going over what these scores mean. I'll show you that in a second. We'll then get into a quick intro, talk about some breaking news of everything that's going on this year and how that's going to change things. Then we're going to proceed into really the fun stuff, which is, which test to take and how to raise your score, how to kind of maximize this thing as much as you possibly can. And we'll end with some ways that we can help, and of course, Q&A if you guys have any at the end, where those speakers will really come in handy. But just as we're still waiting for some people to join the room, I just want to start by going over a little bit about the practice tests. And for those of you who took the test with us this morning and you're looking at your results, a couple of things here. First, how these results work is you are shipped an Excel spreadsheet here. And the main thing that you'll probably want to look at, of course, although this is not the most valuable thing, as we'll discuss in a minute, is this first page, which tells you what your score is. So this character here, John, don't worry, you don't have to worry about hurting his feelings. He's fictional. I made him up. He didn't score the greatest on this test. He did better than in some areas than others. But his score was a 14 in English, 18 in math, 17 in reading, and 14 in science. And that averages to this score down here. Those of you who are looking at an SAT spreadsheet, by the way, I probably don't have to say this, but if you were emailed back your score, now it's a good time to open those up and take a look at it. Those scores on the ACT are averaged into a composite here. Now, you guys took practice test. Daniel, most of you did the ACT, so you'll have a bar more over here in this area. But either way, it'll average out to something, a score down here. You guys will probably have an average score right there. So that's your average score, and that is your composite. That is your ACT score as it is. So 16 is a little bit below average. John didn't have the greatest day. I mean, his name is redundant. How good a day could he have had? If it's an SAT, they get your score by adding the math and the verbal together. And so an average score there is about 1,000. Most people score somewhere in the 800 to 1,200 range. Now, that is, of course, probably what you're all looking at. If you're curious about your essay, we haven't had time to grade all the essays yet, but we'll be sending those back next couple of days. Oops, excuse me. I think I just beat myself by accident for a moment. We'll be sending your essays back today and over the next couple of days in case you didn't get them yet. But the essay score does not actually factor into your score. It's reported separately. It's sort of a cherry on the top, like, oh, this kid got a 27 and this kid also got a 27. Ooh, but this guy averaged a 10 on his essay and this other kid only got a 6 on his essay. So it can kind of help, especially if you're applying to, I don't know, a journalism major or something like that. Now, as I said, this is your main page here, but you're also going to want to look at the tab that's further to the right. It's called Practice Test Dan Answers. Now, this particular student didn't take Practice Test Dan, so they don't have any data here. He took Charlie, so I'm going to go look at that one. But basically, you just want to find the answer key of what you answered. And this, frankly, is a much more interesting thing than you've got than the data page here. Why it's so useful is because this tells you which ones you got right, which ones you got wrong, and what you can do about it. This, for instance, shows that on John's section 1, he got question 1 wrong. He put C, that was his answer, but the correct answer was B. Same with question 2, he got that one wrong as well. And he can say, oh, I got J, I put J down, but actually the answer was F. Then he hit a little bit of a hot streak, got 5 right in a row, and so on. So you can use this to tell, okay, where did I do really well? Here was I didn't really do very well in any of the science sections, but here was a math chunk where he did pretty well. He got a lot of the right answers, but maybe he can look at question 1 in the English and say, why was the answer actually C? What could I do about that? How could I pick that one next time? So use this, guys, because one of the main lessons that we're going to talk about today is the SAT and the ACT are the same test every single time. And so what you want to do is look at the ones that you missed. It's like playing the same board of a video game over and over again. Even if you don't know how to play that video game very well, if you just do it a bunch of times in a row, you'll start to see where the lessons are. And if you had, somebody who helped design the video game show you where the secret one-ups are, and if you shoot that guy in his big toe, he explodes immediately. So that's a cool trick. You can learn from this. This test has to be the same every time for reasons that we'll go into. But take these tests home, kids, and look at these. Figure out which questions you were good on, which ones you weren't good on, and the ones you weren't good on, learn them, because you can get good on the next time. So that's roughly how the score sheets work. I want to kind of backtrack here now and get into our introduction. I want to kind of formally welcome everybody. In fact, I'm going to stop sharing here for a second. Oops. No, still sharing. Here we go. And I want to just say hello and welcome everybody to the PJ Test Prep, Understanding the SAT, ACT, the April 2020 COVID edition. This is going to be a fun and interesting presentation here today. We're going to cover all the same fun stuff we normally do, how to maximize your game as far as the SAT and the ACT is concerned. We also have lots of news that's happened, because apparently these days brand new news happens every hour, and things are changing. The world is burning around us, and so you guys will want to know how all of this is going to affect your college application process and all that. So I'm going to get into all that stuff, give you the current state of affairs, what I think is going to happen over the next 6 months, what the best probably plan of approach is for you guys. Before I get into any of that, pretty sure you guys are still going to college. 18 months away for those of you who are juniors is a long time. Colleges, they make a lot of money when students go there. So I think they're going to try really hard to make this college thing happen. I don't think that's going to change. I think in the big picture, stuff's going to be fine. But of course, we have some little bumps in the road by all the cancellations and change of venues and stuff that's going on this spring. So I'm going to get into that. I first want to start just with a quick introduction and welcome you guys to what's going on here. As I said, I'm Paul Jury. I'm the founder of PJ Test Prep. My last name, Jury, is just like in the court. Feel free to make fun of it if you like. Some suggestions include injury, forgery, grand jury, perjury, or if I ever went to England and got knighted, I would be surgery. My first name, Paul, is less interesting. I'd like to think I was named after St. Paul, which is a city in Minnesota where I was born, or Pope Paul, who was a pretty sweet pope. I'm actually named Paul, though, because my parents squeezed me out late in Q4 in December, and their accountant said, guys, that was tremendous timing, because now you're going to get a tax write-off for the entire previous year. They were so happy that they high-fived and named me after their accountant, whose name was Paul. In any case, I stand before you guys because I have, or sit, because I got this sweet leather chair today, because I've been doing this for quite a while. I originally, back when I was a sophomore in high school, like many of you, I got pulled out of class one day and sat down and took a PSAT, and I was like, what the heck is this? I don't know what's going on. I did okay on it. Like many of you, I was, reasonably strong at reading and math, but I didn't know how this test worked. I didn't know that there were weird rules to it, like if even one word is wrong in a reading answer choice, the whole entire thing is wrong, or that you had to know math, going up to about 9th grade, but mostly it was math that you covered in like 8th and 7th grade, and I didn't remember mean, median, and mode and all this division with remainders and stuff I'd learned in 4th grade. And so, I did okay. But I did learn that important rule about the test, guys, which is that it's the same thing every single time. And if you can just go home and learn the ones that you didn't do, as I found, eventually you just stop missing questions. So just doing practice tests like the one you guys did this morning over and over again. Step 2, check those answers and learn from them. And step 3, try to make some notes so you can remember them for next time. It has to be the same test every time. Somehow, I don't know how I exactly did this, because my high school GPA was just kind of meh, but I tricked Northwestern into letting me in, studied writing and psychology, which are both very useful for tricking high school students into raising their scores. Ended up in LA, worked for one of the giant test prep factories for a couple of years, yada, 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 started my own company, and PJ Test Prep has been helping kids maximize this whole college process, raising scores, getting better grades on their academic subjects and so forth for over 15 years now. So I'm going to try to, as best as I can, smash some of that insight into you guys's worlds here in the next hour or so. I also have been, because this is my business, I have been religiously studying the impact of everything that's happening with this whole stupid virus thing and how that's changing the college landscape a little bit. Like I said, overall, the main picture is kind of the same, but there are definitely some differences in the short term, especially this year for juniors who are going to be applying. So I'm going to cover all of that too. Before I begin, though, I'm actually going to start you guys off with a test question, with an actual ACT test question that will kind of, I hope, lay the groundwork for what I hope to get across today. So you guys all got a handout that was sent to you. Now's the time to take a look at that. And I'm actually going to be looking at the science section here. I want to have you guys look at this science question here on this page. In fact, one thing I'm going to do is snip this sucker and write all over it. So cool. All right, my pen's working. Guys, I want to actually start you off with this science question. We're just going to jump right in here, both because it provides kind of a fun reminder of why you guys are here, but it also gets across an important point about what I hope you guys remember, which is that these tests are very learnable. And the more you learn about them, the more comforting and the easier this stuff will be, the less intimidating this whole thing is. So let's take a look, for those of you who took the ACT section this morning, at a science section, which is one of the most intimidating sections on this entire test. What this section's key, though, is that they're not actually allowed to test any science at all. The science section on the ACT is just a graph reading contest. So the idea is that you are supposed to kind of jump up and see what is going on in the graph. But remember that they're not actually allowed to test any science at all. Because the idea with this is that it's not fair to test science, because if you're throwing actual science concepts at students, like, I don't know, how many electrons are there in a boron atom? Well, some people would know that. Somebody just took chemistry and just learned the periodic table, and they're like, oh, I know all about borons. And other people will say, you're a boron. It isn't fair for them to test science concepts. Science curriculums around the country are so wildly varied that they can't expect all kids to know any particular concept. So here's what they do. They test stuff that nobody knows. I mean, not nobody, like some plate tectonic geologist knows this stuff, but not you. You're not supposed to know it, though. Your job is just to simply look at the axes and get the basic idea of what's going on. So when you see a graph like this, your first reaction should be, do not panic, do not freak out and run screaming from the room. Instead, just say, all right, I don't know what's going on here, but as we go to the right, apparently the temperature gets hotter. And as we go down, if I'm looking at my side axes here, depth, the more I go down, the more depth increases. You know, the way depth kind of works. On the other side, we actually have a double axis here. It's extra tricky today. Pressure. Pressure apparently seems to increase the further we go down as well. Now, you might actually know that. You might remember, hey, wait a minute. One time when I went to, scuba diving, the more I went down, the more pressurized it became. Oh yeah, but you don't even have to know that because that's written right here. So we have the basics. Start with your graph, start with your axes, and don't worry about what the stuff is in the middle. I have no idea what a facies is. It doesn't matter, though. It's not going to get in the way of me getting the right answer. All I need to know is that whatever like facies F is, apparently it's hotter than facies C. So when I look at my graph then, I don't need to know what facies G is. I just need to go and like circle it. So here's facies G. This is the one down here. And they're asking me about which pressure and temperature conditions it will form under. Well, facies G like lots of different temperatures, everything from like 200 on up. So that's not really that useful. But look at where facies G's temperature is. In fact, if you drew a line over here, you can see that facies G likes not very little temperature, but a lot of temperatures, like 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, more than 10. Oh, well, so the answer is J. That's all you have to do. But what's a facies? Who cares what a facies is? It is irrelevant. It does not matter what that is. All you have to do is point at the funny looking thing and circle the number or the word or the answer that is by it. So understanding that about the science makes it way easier. I haven't had many students. In fact, I looked at some of your ACT scores this morning, and it does seem like some of you were completely overwhelmed by the science and had no idea what to do. That's okay. That is natural. That is not a big deal. It just means you haven't learned the rules of the game yet. And once you learn the rules of the game, you realize, oh, they're actually simpler than I thought. I don't have to be intimidated by this. All I need to do is look in, figure out the rules of the test, practice that until I'm comfortable with them, and then get the answer. So that's how the science works, guys. All of the other sections are similar. They all kind of work in that same sort of way where we just want to try to understand the basic rules of the test, and then we get better at it. It's the same test every time. It has to be. So let me make sure nobody else is waiting to get into the room here. Okay, no worries. Okay, so guys, that's a basic intro to the test. Now I want to talk about what is kind of going on with your scores, what's going on with what they mean. So once again, let me share with you guys here this first page, and talk a little bit about what your scores mean. We kind of went over them, but there is a good little diagram here at the top of this page where we can look and see kind of what these scores mean. If you're curious, guys, about where your score falls on this chart, the average on the SAT, this last year it was a little bit higher, but it's usually around 1,000. That's typically kind of the middle of the road, which means that, you know, if you got a 900 this morning, sure, you could have done better perhaps, and many people have done better, but you still scored right in the middle of the pack. You didn't do horribly. If you got a 900, lots of colleges are going to let you in. In fact, there's a reason the NCAA minimum is 17 on the ACT and 820 on the SAT, because a lot of people score in that range. If you get below that, you won't be allowed to play sports in college, but there are colleges out there that will have you. If you are getting an average score, there's going to start to be, you know, a little bit of scholarships for being above average, particularly at schools that maybe aren't the super competitive ones. This is going to get you into a lot of colleges. This is the natural average. So even though you might think, oh, a 21's not that great, I had a friend who got a 34. Well, your friend is a very amazing test taker. 21 is still better than half the kids in the country. So you did okay. Might not be good enough for Princeton, but there's definitely a lot of places that will accept you. This range here, these are like the really high scores. 1,300 is, I mean, even at 1,200 is very good. That's a really good score. 26, 27, particularly at 28. This is kind of the range at which most colleges, you're like an auto admit if you have a 1,300 or a 28. And even the most selective colleges, you're now starting to qualify for. Harvard takes kids every year with 1,300s. MIT takes kids every year with 1,300s. Now, sure, they take more kids with 1,500s, but the 1,300 is where everybody is starting to say, wow, that's a really solid score, let's consider. The 1,500 plus range, these are like the top 1 to 2 percentile scores. This basically means you got a perfect score on the test. If you get a 1,500 plus or a 33 plus, and a school doesn't admit you, it wasn't because of that. It was, I don't know, oh, we have too many kids who are left-handed last year. Sorry, no more lefties. Or, ooh, I don't know, this kid's last name starts with a vowel. I'm afraid we can't take any of those. Or, plays the trombone. No, we're only into tubas this year. It's very arbitrary at the top end. My only advice for you, if you're applying to the most selective colleges, the Stanfords, the Ivy Leagues, the, you know, I mean, even UCLA and Berkeley these days are getting super duper competitive. My only advice for those schools is apply to more than one of them, because one of those schools, if you have really high scores, is going to let you in, but there's going to be another school that doesn't, that, you know, for whatever reason. My brother is a good example of this. My younger brother was a very strong student, you know, near the top of his class in high school, very strong in math. In fact, his sort of odd feature was he was the captain of the math team and the captain of the football team. He was like very tall and skinny and just loved math. And he wrote his college essay about how math is like football. He didn't do that great on the SAT's verbal section. He got like a 560, which is above average, but it's not quite as good as the, I think, 790 or something he got on the math. And so he got rejected from at least one school. University of Washington in St. Louis said, you know what, I'm sorry. we can't in good conscience let somebody with a 560 in. We have too many 650s and 700s trying to go here. But MIT let him in, so he went there, which, why? Who knows why? Maybe they liked his essay. Maybe they said, nobody needs to read English anymore. It's all about math. You never know why. You can get into the number 1 or number 2 school in the country and get rejected from number 40, or get rejected from number 40 and get into number 20 or number 18 or who knows what. Just apply. The schools that you are a good match for will often find you. And so you just kind of want to put your best face forward in all of these different categories. Now, these categories are changing a little bit this year. And so I do want to talk a little bit about the COVID adjustments and kind of what's going on and the latest news and what that's going to mean. Now, before I get into that, our usual timetable looks a little something like this. Typically, freshman and sophomore years, you don't need to worry about these tests that much. You can just focus on getting good grades and taking the PSAT, which is good practice, although it doesn't really count as a sophomore, and so forth. And think about stuff you'd want to look into college. Junior year, typically spring is the time that you want to take the SAT and the ACT. It can be taken earlier or later. Some people take it in the fall of their junior year or in even the summer before, although usually I recommend waiting till spring of junior year. Turns out that was really horrible advice of me this year, because that's exactly when test dates started getting canceled. But you can take it over the summer. You can take it in the fall. One thing that I think is going to change certainly is colleges are going to push their deadlines back a little bit, especially if things, I like to think we're already starting to maybe turn the corner on the curve, or at least the beginning of it out here in California. Over the summer and fall, things will most likely continue to get better, and the chances of there being tests then and colleges accepting those tests later and later is probably good this year. But generally, if any of you guys are sophomores or freshmen, generally spring of junior year is the time to do that. Then you work on your college application essays over the summer, take any SAT2s that you need to, and clean up anything in the fall. Now, this year, as I said, things are going to be a little bit different. Because we have lost most kids lost their March SAT date. We lost the April ACT date. We lost the May SAT date. I had tons of students getting ready to take those tests, and now their tests are being punted. The June test dates are still on. Now, people have asked me, do I think those June test dates are going to go? I wish I could tell you that I knew for sure they were. I can tell you that the SAT and the ACT are saying, yes, they are go. Could they change their minds? If things get worse, yeah, they could. It's possible those tests could be postponed too. I will tell you that I do think the SAT and the ACT are going to try really, really, really hard to find some creative solutions to safely administer tests this late spring and summer, and particularly in the fall. They want to stay in business. If they go 6 whole months without giving SATs or ACTs, one of the other big news is that the UCs and a bunch of other colleges have gone test optional for this year. And the SAT and the ACT, they don't want to become irrelevant. They don't want everybody to, have a year where SATs weren't required, and then people are like, the SATs aren't that big a deal. Maybe we don't need them anymore. The SAT doesn't want to lose $1 billion, so they're going to try really hard to find ways for kids to be able to test without, there being a big risk. When is that going to happen? It's hard to say. I think the June ones, I don't know. I'm 50-50 on them. I want to say that they're going to go, especially if things keep getting better. But I readily admit that, people get really quick to cancel things if they're worried. It would be more likely a postponement than an outright canceling. I also think the SAT and the ACT are both, especially the SAT, are going to roll out extra test dates once things look clear. So you will have a chance to take these tests. And at PG Test Prep, I felt so bad for all of my kids who prepped for the April test, for the March test, only to have them canceled. And so what we're doing is giving a bunch of opportunities for people to stay warm with us, to take, these free online videos that I'm putting out. I'll keep you guys on the email list for that. but I'm basically just publishing videos for you guys to stay warm, to keep prepping. All of our kids who take our classes can keep taking the same class over and over again for free. It's like basically you buy a ticket to watch a Disney movie, and then you can keep going back to the theater. Well, not right now. Bad timing of that joke, but in order to be able to see the movie again and again, and that's kind of our policy. So we're trying to help with that, but obviously things are disrupted. Schools are canceled. I mean, I believe, I don't know if they've announced it officially yet, but it doesn't sound like California schools are going back this spring, not until the fall. So obviously stuff has changed. I do think they're going to try to take tests. Because for reasons I've said. I'll talk also a little bit in a minute about what test optional really means. The AP exams have also been disrupted. They are still doing them, but now if you haven't heard, they are going to be taken at home. They're going to be 45-minute long tests that you're administering at home. That might be better for you. It might be easier. It's certainly shorter. And, you know, you'll be able to hopefully we're still, my tutors and I, who tutor a lot of the AP subjects, are looking into what kind of practice material they're releasing so we can make sure. But I suspect the format is going to be very much the same, just a little bit shorter. Anyway, though, things are obviously very up in the air. Now, what I don't think is going to change is that you juniors, and I think most of you guys in this group are juniors, I think you are still going to college in a year and a half. 18 months is, even by the most conservative estimates, we'll definitely have a vaccine by then for this stupid COVID thing. Colleges really want you there because, yeah, like I said, turns out they make a lot of money when students are going there. Deadlines might be pushed back, but otherwise, like I said, I think they're going to make SATs. The SATs and the ACTs are going to be very creative. You know, ESPN.com is still posting stories about sports, mostly about like marble racing tournaments and whatnot, but they're kind of hoping that people still remember sports when all this is over. Now, as far as what test optional means, because that's one of the biggest, you know, pieces of new news, the UCs, other schools are going test optional. It means exactly that. It means that the tests, the SAT and the ACT, are now optional, which, you know, I think is actually good news for you guys. It definitely takes the pressure off of stuff. And given that particularly, you know, students who live in really affected areas, students who maybe don't have tons of means anyway, it might be hard for them to get out to take a test, especially if they push any more of them. And so this is a really nice thing that they have done, where they have allowed you guys to submit a score if you can, if it helps you, but you don't have to. That's what test optional means. Now, our kind of general recommendation is, assuming that you're able to, I'm still recommending to try to take the test if you can, because at this point with test optional schools, and you know, some schools are always test optional, but this year more of them are, they always like to see a good SAT score. I mean, if you have a 3.9 and some other kid has a 3.9, but you also submit a 1400 SAT score, they're not supposed to do this, but they kind of can't help but think, oh, that other kid probably doesn't have a 1400 SAT score to submit. Probably if they would have taken the test, they did better. Maybe they did and chose not to submit it. And so as much as they're not supposed to count that against you, and you know, if you really are in the top kind of GPA area for a particular school, they still will, you know, accept you. You're not going to be penalized, but it could help. Basically, as we see down here, guys, test requiring schools are going to still require it. There probably are going to be some that still require it through all this. They probably are going to be more flexible about their scores and deadlines. The test optional schools are going to consider the SAT and the ACT kind of like bonus gold stars on your application that will help you push up your grades if those are low or not enough to get you into a school. All colleges will, with grades and test scores being weird this year, I think there's going to be a lot of weight to the college essay this year. Basically, the other change that they announced, I don't know if you guys have heard this too, but the UCs are also going grade optional for at least the winter, spring, and summer of 2020, which means if you want to have a pass-fail situation in a class, or if your school is doing pass-fail, normally they don't allow that in the A through G classes, but they are allowing it this spring. So let's say that, in the winter, you're kind of struggling in your pre-calc class and you're maybe going to get a C. And then the teacher said, hey, since we're online, you guys now have a chance to go pass fail. You want to do that? Now you can, and get that C, get that pass. And to them, it looks like you might as well have gotten an A. So because of that, because of the SAT and ACT being impacted, I think the college essay is going to be gigantic this year. Also, I do a lot of essay advising. I'll talk more about this later, but I think a lot of people are going to write COVID essays. So watch out. Make sure you have a really, really good one, because there's going to be giant stacks of them on everybody's desk. But that, I think, is going to play in all together. In fact, the reason I kind of think that the weights are shifting has a little bit to do with something that is always true among these. Hold on, I need to find. Hi, where is this document? Hi. Come back. Oh, there it is. It got away. Here we go. Sorry about that. These are my kids, by the way. I have a 3-year-old and a preschooler who have no idea what's going on and why they aren't going to preschool right now. This, guys, is what colleges always care about. And usually they consider kind of all 4 of these traits. They weight certain ones a little bit more than others. Like usually GPA is number 1 here. Let me mark this up a little bit. Typically grades are usually like their number 1 thing that they really care about. And then these others kind of factor in somewhere different. They care about your activities and, what kinds of things you're involved in, your leadership roles, who you are. This is most commonly expressed through your essay, but also your teacher recs and stuff like that. And then the SAT and the ACT, of course. Now, the reason they even have the SAT and the ACT is because grades aren't always perfect. We all know anecdotes of people who, some friend of yours has a 4.8 GPA, but like they can't even tie their shoes. I don't know how they have a 4.8. I think they've just been bribing the teacher and bringing suitcases full of unmarked bills. Well, if they have a 4.8 and only get a 16 on the SAT or ACT, boy, it'd be really tough to get a 16 on the SAT. Well, then they know why. So, that kind of exposes that. We also have kids who don't always have the greatest grades, but they're very clever. I mean, Steve Jobs had a 2.8 in high school. But, if Steve Jobs wanted to apply to the school that you were the admittance counselor for, I think you'd want to let him in. That's a lot of donation money. And so grades and SAT scores are kind of meant to sort of balance each other out. They don't have as much leeway with that this year because of the restrictions and because so many schools are going test optional. So with this restricted a little, with this restricted, you can't even go outside, much less be the leader on your volleyball team right now. Like that leaves this one really off the charts. So if there's anything that I could recommend that you guys do, besides try to still take the SAT, ACT if you can, it's make sure your essay is super strong, because I think a lot of people are going to outkick their coverage this year by really executing on the one thing that's actually up this year. So do keep that in mind. Anyway, that is sort of what I think is going to happen with a lot of these schools. Now, in terms of when you might take these tests, what with these new restrictions going on, I do think that they're going to push back their deadlines a little bit. If you were signed up for the March or April, or excuse me, if you were signed up for the March or April SAT or ACT or May, you have been automatically punted to the June dates. I would still stay up for those. You got time right now. You might as well practice for them. I mean, whether you're doing it with a class, all of our classes right now are running online. Also, our tutors are tutoring online. But even if you're just going every day and spending a half an hour looking through one of the Khan Academy tests, or the SAT publishes all those same tests on their website, now's a good time to get prepared for it. There is a chance that the June tests get punted, although as I said, they are preparing to do them. Everything is still go with those tests. But even if they get moved back, or you decide you want to do the July ACT, which for the first time they're administering in California, there's an August SAT, there's both tests in September and October. I think they're going to add more dates. I think they're going to do things like, use the same test centers that they normally do, but only allow like a handful of students in one classroom. And so they're all seated really far away from each other, stuff like that. I don't know that they're going to be ready to go online with their tests, just because it's so easy to cheat. Like, I mean, I would never do this, but less moral companies than I might, say, hey, I'm a 35-year-old nerd. I'll take your test for you for $5,000. I mean, USC, it's been doing that for years. So, I don't know that they're going to go that route because it's hard to enforce that. But I think they will find secure and safe ways to do it at some point. I would say try to take the test as soon as you can. The ACT was scheduled to roll out their policy of allowing not only super scoring, but allow you to retake just one section of the ACT. That was set to start in September. And so that might be just completely on fire now. Like people might be able to take a test in June or July and then retake just the science section or just the math section coming this fall when they probably will have more test dates. And so take advantage if you can. To be clear, you do not have to take these tests for test optional schools. And one good argument for not doing it is, let's say you have a 4.8 GPA and that's above average for the schools that you're looking at. Well, then maybe you just let that ride. You don't need an SAT to pull you up. For instance, one way I usually suggest figuring out whether you need to raise any of these numbers is just Google whatever school you want to go to. Here, I just Googled UC Irvine, GPA, SAT, ACT, and I didn't even have to click on a website. It just popped up on the pre-page on Google. It tells you that, hey, if you want to go to UC Irvine and you've got a 4.3, well, you're already above average in that. So probably you would get into UC Irvine with a 4.3 without ever having to take the SAT or the ACT. Now, if you have a 3.8, oh, okay. I mean, if you were to apply with only a 3.8 and not an SAT or ACT score this year, and your activities are just kind of, you're not the president of a gigantic philanthropic organization, or you didn't write the greatest essay they've ever seen, you probably wouldn't get in this year. So maybe that would be an opportunity to try to push that up a little bit with a high SAT or ACT score. I mean, UC Irvine's not even in the top 3 UCs, and it's super competitive. This is their average score range, meaning that if you get a 33 or 34 or something, you're definitely going to help yourself, or something towards the top end of this. But that might be what would help you decide whether you need to take these tests or not. If you look up, school that's even harder to get into, let's try UCLA's and see what that says. Okay, so UCLA's average GPA is a 4.3. So if you're higher than that, hopefully you can get in. But that might be a case where I only have a 4.1. You might want to toss an SAT or ACT score or something in there to give them a little bit of something extra. So that's always what I tell people. Even if it's a regular year and they're trying to decide, hey, I got an X on my ACT and I want to go to, I don't know, Pepperdine or Podunk Junior College in South Dakota. Well, Google Podunk College average SAT or GPA and see what it says, and let that tell you whether or not you think you need to move some of your numbers up there. And it can be any of the things in that circle quadrant that I showed you guys. So that's sort of what I would suggest. Basically this year, since our spring has been taken from us, try to get these tests in as soon as you can. You don't have to, but just think about what your best strategy is for the applications. I also think they may push back the application deadlines. Usually it's November 30th for the UCs. They haven't announced any postponements yet, but I would not be surprised at all if they moved it back into December or January or even February, which would allow you to have more time to do this depending on how things go. Okay, now in terms of which test you might take, I usually spend a fair amount of time on this, but I'll go quick today since we got other more fun things to get to. The short answer is many students do try both because the SAT and the ACT will just accept whichever score you do the best on. You don't have to take both, especially not this year, but the idea behind taking both would be since the colleges don't care which one you take, why not try them both and then just whichever one you score higher on, use that. The ACT's reputation is sort of the fast but simple test. Many of you took the ACT this morning, probably found it very difficult to get through sections. It's very, very quick. It's hard to finish the whole entire thing. The SAT is the slow but tricky test, as in you get to take your time a little bit more, but the questions are evil sometimes. They're very trappy and tricky and complicated. at their cores, the content of the tests are very similar. I'd say these tests are probably 75% the same. They both test the same math. It goes up through about 9th grade math, algebra 1, there's a lot of that, a little bit of geometry, a little bit of algebra 2, but nothing higher than that. They both test grammar concepts. They both test how well you can read a super boring passage and figure out what it's about. But the styles are different. The ACT likes to go super fast, but the questions are more straightforward. The SAT will be more complicated, but they'll give you more time to do it. In fact, you can look at the time differences here. You actually have 215 questions as opposed to 154 questions. That's 60 more questions in 5 fewer minutes. So that speed thing really does help people make up their mind sometimes. They're like, wow, yeah, I really hate going fast. It really stresses me out. Then maybe you want to try the SAT. Another factor is how much you like math. Normally I have students raise their hand about whether they like math or not, but since we got a bunch of blank screens with nobody's face up, I can't tell that much. If you really, really hate math, you gotta try the ACT, because look at this. They give you only a quarter of your score based on math. Versus the SAT, half your score is based on math. Why? What college has half of your classes be math? That's crazy, but if you love math, take advantage of that. I sometimes have kids who don't really like the verbal section, and they really perform well on the math, and so the SAT is a better fit for them. Now, some people, still don't know what to say. They're like, well, I don't like going fast, but I also don't like trickiness, and I don't like math, but I don't like the verbal either. Well, I don't know what to tell you. Life is hard. Pick your poison. But sometimes it helps somebody at least start with one test. Oh, it sounds like the SAT would be a better test for me. It sounds like the ACT would be a better test for me. You can always take the other one later, and ultimately just, try them both if you want and see which one you score higher on, at least as a practice test. If you guys took a practice ACT with us this morning, maybe you can compare that to your PSAT score that you took last fall. Now, you do got to subtract about 100 points off your PSAT score because the curves are pretty easy on that test that nobody really tries very hard on. But you could also come back and we may try to do another one of these online, do an SAT with us next time and see if you get that. Or maybe you've taken a test with another company, or you took one in school, or you could just take one on your own. That's the best way. Which score is higher? Ultimately, that's the only thing that matters. If you're in the long jump in the Olympics and they give you a choice between jumping once or jumping twice to see which your higher score is, doesn't matter how you jump, doesn't matter how many times you jump, all that matters is what your longest distance is. So why would you not jump twice? Okay, so in terms of which tests to take, in terms of when you should take them, in terms of how COVID is screwing everything up right now, but ultimately I don't think it's going to change the big picture of things. Hopefully most of that makes sense. We'll open this up to a Q&A answer session at the end. But I do want to get to what I think is the funnest part of our session, probably the most important. A lot of that stuff you can look up online. But I do want to talk about, assuming you are going to take this test at some point, how you can raise your score. And that's the second page of our handout, as you can see right here. In fact, if you haven't got that, just head back to your emails that you got from us, and you should be able to find it there. But I'll just post it here. You can read this. You can zoom in a little bit. First of all, guys, and many of you could actually improve your scores of this morning with this technique. Guys, there's no penalty for guessing. Meaning that if you get a question wrong, you get 0 points on it. If you answer a question at all, you get 0 points on it if it's not the right answer. If you leave it blank, you also get 0 points on it. So you should guess on every single question, even if you don't have time to get to it. I encountered a couple of tests where somebody just didn't have time to get to the last reading passage, or didn't have time to get to the last 15 math questions, or didn't have time to do 2 of the science ones. Just bubble B. Wait, why B? Is B like statistically the most correct answer or something? No, but if it makes you feel good, sure. Yeah, B is right. B is the one that's the most often. Well, I like to pick A. My name starts with A, and that's like my lucky letter. Fine, if that makes you feel good. I like to pick the one that's due, that hasn't been picked in a while, because like it's that one's turn. That's not at all how probability works, but if that makes you feel good, fine. The only thing you shouldn't do is sit there and vacillate about it like, wait a minute. they haven't picked D in a while, so I'll bet D is due. Wait, but what if they know that D is due, and so they're purposely going to not make it D? Wait, but what if they know that I know that they know that stop this. You're wasting time. Just pick something and move on. Best case, I'd say glance at the question quickly. Maybe the answers are 1, 2, 3, and 100. Well, don't pick 100 then. That's probably not going to be the answer, because if it was, what kind of lousy wrong answer traps would 1, 2, and 3 be? So there are certain things that you can do to make this easier. On the math section, if you have to guess wildly, pick the answer that looks the most like the other answers. On the English section or the writing for the SAT, they really like brevity, so pick the shortest answer. If it's the reading section and you're stuck between two and they both seem right, whichever one is more specific, more detailed, do not pick that one. That one is wrong. That one is what we call a never said that, or a too extreme, or a twisted detail. Pick the nice generic answer. They love generic answers. Like you'll read a passage about, I don't know, two friends, two girls who have an argument, and then they decide they're not going to hang out as much anymore. The wrong answer would be something like, two girls get in an argument and decide they never want to see each other again. Well, most of that sounded okay until the part where they're like, never want to see each other again. Oh, that's a little extreme. They didn't technically say that, so that's what we call a never said that wrong answer type. The wrong answer, or the right answer, would be something super annoying, especially in the SAT, like an event. Really? An event is what this passage was about? Well, yeah, I mean, wasn't it an event? Didn't they get in an argument? Well, technically, yeah, I guess it's not wrong. Well, then it's right, because that's what not wrong means. In fact, we'll see an example question kind of like that. But use little things like that to help you always bubble everything. For those of you who left big chunks of questions blank on your test, guys, you're just giving away valuable points. If you left 10 questions blank, if you just would have bubbled all those randomly, you would have raised your score at least 1 point, maybe 2 points. If you left 30 or 40 questions blank, you left 3 or 4 points sitting on the board. So always fill in everything, but it's okay to not do every question. Maybe some of the math questions are just too hard. Well, then just guess on randomly on some of them. I like to use an analogy of, let's say that you're in front of a banquet table and it's covered in different sized cakes. We have large cakes, we have small cakes, we have medium cakes. They're all scattered all over. Every cake is worth $10. If you eat the little tiny miniature cupcake sitting at the front of the table, I'll give you 10 bucks. If you eat the medium-sized cupcake sitting a little bit further back, I'll give you 10 bucks. If you eat the giant 10-layer wedding cake draped in sewage on the back part of the table, I'll give you 10 bucks. Cakes of many sizes, 60 of them. Each one's worth 10 bucks. You have an hour. Where are you going to start? Eat the little cakes, right? Guzzle the little cakes until they're gone. Then, if you have time for it, eat the medium cakes and then work your way up. And only if you have time and stomach for it should you ever even touch the big cake. It's probably just going to give you a stomach ache. And trust me, the hard math questions, especially at the end of the SAT, by the way, the SAT ones go easy to hard, you're just going to save yourself a stomach ache. Those ones will give you some serious indigestion. So find the easiest questions for you. If there are 4 reading passages and you don't have time to get through all 4, just pick the easiest 3. Skip the one that looks the most boring, the one that just kills your soul, even to look at it. Now you might think, well, that sounds like quitter attitude. I want to get a really, really high score. Okay, if you're trying to get a 36 on the ACT, yeah, you need to get all of the questions right. But if you're at a 23 right now, you can get a 27 or a 28 by just doing 3 of the passages well and just guessing randomly on the other ones. So how does that sound? If you already have a 33, then that's not a good strategy for you. But slowing down can allow you to get more right, and then you'll still pick up the other ones just by guessing. So guess less, score more, as they say sometimes. Now, rule number 2 here, guys, is there's no such thing as a most correct answer. There is a right answer, and then there are 3 wrong answers. And that's the way it always is on every SAT question. You might think more than one of them sound right, but that's just because you don't know the wrong answer choices yet. The key to improvement, especially on those verbal portions, is when you get one wrong, try to study what is actually wrong with that one and learn their rules. There's only a couple of ways that they write the wrong answer choices over and over and over again. So as a means of demonstrating that, I want to show you guys a passage here. Let's look at the reading passage here. I'll blow it up on my screen so you can read it, maybe even if you don't have the handout, but feel free to try this. See if you can get this answer right before I do. I'll read it for you, but I want to kind of demo how this type of passage works. So, passage goes, daily life is overflowing with mundane mental events. A paperclip gleams amid stacks of documents, a friend's face shines like a beacon out of a crowd, smell of freshly baked bread evokes childhood memories. So I'm just going to highlight some of these things that we're seeing here. Thoughts and perceptions such as these flow by with monotonous ease. So if I was to summarize this, and this is generally a good tip for any time you're reading a passage, I try to make little notes in the margin like perception seems easy. All right, so it seems anyway, there's a transition word right there. Yet, given what scientists know about how brains work, even the ability to perceive a paperclip on a messy desk represents an extraordinary and mysterious achievement. Okay, but it's actually pretty cool that our brains can do that. I'm gonna write, but wow. Perception seems easy, but wow would be my summary of that passage. Okay, so then we get to the questions. And you always want to re-summarize the answer choice or the question to yourself to make sure you understand it. So in the first paragraph, wait a minute, that means that anything from this second paragraph is now off limits. Goodbye, because first paragraph. The author implicitly likens our experience of sensory impressions. What the heck are you talking about? What does that even mean? Read it a couple of times if you need to. Try to summarize it to yourself so that you can understand it a little bit better. The author implicitly likens, you mean compares? So the author is saying that these different things, this paperclip, these friend's face, the freshly baked bread smell, well, what is he saying? Let me try to put this in my own words. He's just saying, like, they're not that hard. Like, perceiving these things is no big deal. I look around the room and I see, hey, a map, hey, a door, hey, a person, hey, a computer. It's not that big a deal. The fact that the scientists think it's cool, that's irrelevant. That's not what they're saying in the first paragraph. That's in the second paragraph. And so when I get to the answer choices, I like to do what we call yes, no, maybe. Sometimes you just see an answer, you're like, yeah, that's perfect. I'm picking that one. Other times you'll see an answer, you're like, well, that's garbage. That's a terrible answer. I don't want that one. There will be times, no matter how good you are at this section or how bad, there will be times where you see an answer choice and you're like, I don't know about that one. Like, I kind of like it, but I sort of want to see what else is there. Or, I don't really like it, but I guess I don't really know why it's wrong. So we like to do that with ours too. That makes it go a little bit faster. Let's move through these and you guys give me your thoughts on this. I can see maybe a dozen of you, but the rest of you guys feel free to turn your cameras on so you can at least give me a thumbs down or thumbs up or maybe about these. What do you guys think about an emotional roller coaster? Does that seem like a good answer, bad answer, maybe? I see a couple of big fat thumbs downs on that one, and that's absolutely right. This is a horrific answer choice. We should not pick this. Here are two reasons why not. First of all, emotional is what we would call a never said that. You guys should actually write this phrase down. Never said that is like your best friend on this section. So many of the answer choices are this, and these are tricky because they're things that like sound like they might be true in real life, but they didn't actually state them in the passage, and that makes them wrong. So be careful of that. I always used to pick this one. This is also wrong. Roller coaster, even if it had mentioned emotions, roller coaster is like way too extreme. So another wrong answer type is called too extreme. A is a horrible answer. Don't pick that one. How about B, an unobstructed stream? Huh? A lot of people's reaction to B is, what the heck? What does that even mean? And there's nothing wrong with just saying, I have no idea what B even says. Now, that is not a no. Don't eliminate it just because you don't know what it says. Don't pick it either. Just say, I don't know about B. It's too confusing for me. Leave it alone. How about C, repeated image? Yes, no, maybe. Well, there's a couple of words here that are making a few people shake their head. The main one here is repeated, guys. What was repeated? Nothing was repeated. There's always some brainiac who's like, wait, no, oh, wait, paperclip, that was repeated. That is in the second paragraph. And so, bah, off limits. Get the heck out of here. See, you are wrong because nothing in the first paragraph was repeated. You know what? I'll even argue that image was wrong. Well, but paperclip, that's an image. Sure. Friend's face, that's an image. Sure. But this one was a smell. Well, but it was 2/3 right. Well, then it's all thirds wrong on the SAT, guys. We have to remember that everything must always be necessarily true. It can't just, well, possibly, it could be. No, that's always wrong on this test. This test is a definitely kind of test. How about D, a nostalgic reminiscence? All right, we'll leave this one alone. Some people seem like they're into it a little bit. How about E, a diverting daydream? This one's a little much. Daydream is like you're not paying attention in class because you're too busy thinking about a smell of freshly baked bread. Diverting is like even worse. That's distracting. Like you're so busy thinking about this paperclip that you crash your car into a tree. That this seems way too extreme. So I don't think we want to pick E, which leaves us with choosing between B and D. And here's where a lot of you guys will go wrong and pick D because you like it better, because you know the words or something like that. But what's wrong with B? I don't know. I just don't know what it says. If you don't know what an answer choice says, you should not make your decision based on that answer choice. What you should do is say, it might be right, it might be wrong, I don't know because I can't understand it. Let me look more carefully at nostalgic reminiscence. Guys, what's a reminiscence? Isn't that a memory? You mean like a paperclip gleams? Present tense? Friend's face shines? Present tense? Those aren't memories. Well, the third one, freshly baked bread childhood memories, that could be a reminiscence. I'll give you that. It could even be a nostalgic reminiscence, but that's only one out of the three things. The other two weren't even memories, much less nostalgic ones. Like what? Oh, that paperclip. We had such good times stapling papers together. I miss him so much. What are you talking about? That's not a nostalgic reminiscence. Do not get suckered into the ones that are a little bit right. They have to be all the way right. Well, but I still don't like this one. It doesn't matter. It's not wrong, and that means it's right. If you look more carefully, stream is supported by things like flow by with monotonous ease, overflowing, you know, like what a stream does. Well, but what about unobstructed? Well, what does that mean? No obstructions. Okay, where are the obstructions? Well, I guess they didn't say there were any obstructions. Oh, so it's unobstructed and it's a stream. Well, I just hate that answer and I hate you and I hate your face and I hate this test. You don't have to like it. You just have to know how it works. I'm sure your parents have things about their jobs that they don't love and they wish they could just not have to compliment the boss's ties on Tuesday, or they didn't have to go to the picnic where the boss's ugly husband cooks the most disgusting Rice Krispie treats, but you have to pretend like they're good when you're really glucose intolerant. And you have to do things in life that you don't like sometimes. You just need to know how to work the system. Guys, this is just a giant game. Everything in life is a giant game. The winner is the one who games it the best. Learn the rules. You don't have to like them. Okay, enough time spent on that one. Let me talk about two quicker questions, and then we'll open this up to some question and answers. Guys, the next question I've got for you here is English or writing question. This section is very important on the ACT, section 1. It's worth a quarter of your score. On the SAT, it's worth almost a quarter of your score. It's a little bit less than the writing, or the reading rather, but it's still important. Now this section, guys, is mostly a grammar section. When I say mostly, I mean about 75%. 75% of the questions are like number 1 here, where they just simply underline part of this. Let's get a running start into this sentence. Bilbo Swede, labor patriot. The autobiography of Ben Allen Swede is littered with inaccuracies. Swede even fudges the date of his birth. He incorrectly lists July 4th, Independence Day, and makes himself younger by 15 years. Okay, here we have what we would call a connector question. Connectors, aka conjunctions or punctuation marks, is their favorite grammar thing to test on both tests. You need to know how a semicolon works. FYI, a semicolon is just the same as a period. If you could put a period there, you could put a semicolon there. There just isn't a capital letter afterwards. But you must inspect to make sure that in answer choice C, you have a complete sentence before it. Yeah, that part's a complete sentence. Ooh, but this is not a complete sentence. You cannot have a semicolon here separating two things that aren't complete sentences. So goodbye to C. We also have a semicolon. Oh, wait, no, we do have a colon here. You probably wouldn't do D either because you wouldn't say he incorrectly, he fudges the date of his birth, incorrectly listing July 4th, Independence Day, and makes himself younger by 15 years. That just sounds like an awkward place to pause there. So we don't want to put a colon there in the middle of what would just flow naturally without any punctuation mark. This is a better use of a colon. B sets up the ways in which he has used inaccuracies, and then here they come. He incorrectly lists Independence Day, item 1, and he makes himself younger by 15 years. That's why B is going to be our correct answer. And sometimes the answer is no change, but here we can't do this because just like a semicolon and a period can separate two complete sentences, a comma must never do that. You can't ever have a comma between two complete sentences. We already have periods to do that. We already have semicolons to do that, and so forth. So we just covered 1/2 of the most important grammar concept that they test on the SAT and the ACT. There are only 8 things that they test over and over and over and over again. Connectors is the #1 most biggest grammar thing. They also do like verbs, they do pronouns, they do modifiers, they do brevity. Remember, keep it short if you possibly can. The other thing that they do, and this is another big one, besides connectors, it's their #1 favorite thing to do, is questions that aren't about grammar. I said it was 75% grammar. It's 25% something else, and the something else is this. You guys see how question 2 just has a different format? Instead of just going right into no change, it asks you a question. It says, hold on, given that all of these are true, which one best provides the best transition into the rest of the essay? This is not about grammar. These assignment questions are not about grammar. They get into something different, namely, can you follow what's going on? So the fact that this was called Bilbo Swede Labor Patriot, and then it says, however, fuzzy, matter little, because the autobiography isn't about the life of Bilbo Swede. Swede became famous for his work. He got involved in the labor movement. I don't really care that he was born in Nebraska and moved to Chicago. This is called Labor Patriot. Probably I'm going to want to pick an answer more like C that does what they're asking. What's the best transition to the rest of the essay? Now, I admit they don't actually give you the rest of the essay here, so it's a little unfair. But given that it's called Labor Patriot, that they talk about labor in the thesis sentence of the next paragraph, these questions require you to actually pay attention a little bit, God forbid. You got to know what you're reading in order to answer these ones correctly. So be good at grammar. Know the 7 or 8 grammar concepts that they hit you with over and over and over and over again. But be paying attention for these types of questions as well. These ones will make a huge difference in your score. Okay, the last thing I want to hit is a math question. This is one of my favorite things to test. For the math guys, one way to be good at math, of course, is just to be better at math. And self-math review is not a bad way to get a good start on your SAT or your ACT. Just look at the ones that you missed today. Which which math question did you not know? Oh, I forgot SOHCAHTOA. Shoot, I'm going to need that. Oh, I forgot systems of equations. Well, the SAT tests the heck out of that, so get on it. Oh, I forgot how a square works. Really? Square, huh? Well, you know, do some review. So, of course, being better at math and reviewing the concepts that roughly go up to about 9th grade math can be helpful. But part of what makes these tests so hard, especially the SAT, although the ACT as well, it's not that you didn't know the concept, it's just that you didn't know what the heck to do. Because the SAT is famous for writing math questions in these really weird formats where you don't even really know what you're supposed to do. It's actually only like 8th grade math, but this question looks very confusing. I don't know what to do on it. And so, in addition to being better at the math, the other thing that's very helpful to do, guys, is to learn the tricks. There are some really cool math magic tricks you guys can learn to be able to demolish questions like these in a much easier way than remembering the math. Sure, you could do synthetic division or division of polynomials with a problem like this and try to figure out whether A, B, C, or D is the right answer. But I submit that there's an easier way for this one. And my favorite trick that we like to use on math questions, especially ones with variables, is called, oops, right place here, make up numbers. So what we do on a problem like this one, where we see that they're giving us some ugly equation here and we don't know what's going on, is the first thing we'll do is we'll make up a number. I'm just going to pretend that x equals 1. Well, but how do you know that x equals 1? How do you know it doesn't? Well, but I want x to be 2. Okay, fine. It'll work with 2 as well. But I want x to be 17. Why? Why do you like pain so much? Pick the easiest thing that they will possibly let you get away with. In fact, on this problem, we can pick almost anything we want. I say almost because you can't make x be -3, or you'd have a 0 down here, and then a black hole would open up and suck us all in, and we've got enough problems right now. Why would I want to pick -3 anyway? You wouldn't. I don't know why you would do that, but you can't. So don't pick anything you're not allowed to pick. But other than that, pick anything you want. And I like to always pick the easiest thing they'll possibly let me pick. In this case, 1. Okay, step 2. You then take this x is 1 and you plug it into the question. You say, let me just pretend that this was 1 here and that this was 1 here, and what would happen? Well, I would get 5 minus 2 on the top, and then the bottom I'd get 1 plus 3, and that comes out to be 3/4. Okay, that is step 2. That is all I have to do before I get to step 3, the final payoff step. All you do now, guys, is you take x as 1 and you plug it into your answer choices, and whichever one comes out to be 3/4 is your answer. So let's try that and see what happens. Now, I already didn't really like A or B very much because where's the x? I don't really remember how this algebra works, but I don't think x just like goes away. So I kind of didn't like A and B to begin with, but now I definitely know that they're not going to work because A comes out to be 3/3. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for 3/4. Well, so this is wrong then. This one's even worse. It's 5 minus some chump change. It's 5 minus 2/3, which is like 4 1/3, which is not even remotely close to 3/4. So goodbye, B. You are terrible. I'm sorry that we ever met. C's the same problem. If we plug a 1 in here, this whole thing changes to 1/2 or 2/4. Well, 5 minus 1/2 is not 3/4. It's 4.5. That's not 3/4. That's wrong too. So unless I did something wrong, the answer must be D. And of course, if you plug this in, 5 minus 17/4. 17/4, that's ugly. Let me change that to 4 1/4, because of course 4 goes into 17 4 times with 1 left over. What is 5 minus 4 1/4, guys? Da, 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 3/4, yay! Well, of course it is, because D was the right answer. But wait a minute, that's not how my math teacher would say to do it. Your math teacher's in his house right now. He can't touch you. Your math teacher doesn't care how you get this right. In fact, the SAT definitely doesn't care how you get this right, because it turns out, guys, there's more than one way to be smart. There are some people who are just so freaking good at math, they just see this and then their nerd brain calculates the division of polynomials. Fine, the world needs math nerds. The world also needs clever people who can think their way out of a jam. And the SAT is 100% fine with you being like, I don't know how to do this math, but I thought of this other weird way to do it. Let me try to do it that way. You don't have to be good at math. You can also be good at test taking. And that is what the nature of the SAT and the ACT are all about, guys. You don't have to be good at these things. I'm not saying it doesn't help, being able to read really well is, of course, useful. And if you just can't read at all, you know, practice. You have plenty of time to read now. Don't tell me you're that busy. Read a lot of books, do some review math problems, keep up on those raw skills. For those of you who are freshmen or sophomores getting an early start on this, don't worry about doing 19 SAT practice tests this spring. Just read a lot, get better at your raw skills. But when it comes time to actually do the test, that's not really what they're basing it on. They're just basing it on whether or not you circled the correct answer. And doing it the math or the reading way isn't always the best way to do that. Or at least be open to another alternative. I was always a pretty good math student. I could get a lot of the questions right on the SAT by myself, but there were some that were too hard for me. And I could sit there and try to do the math and bang my forehead against the table until it bled. Or I could just say, I don't know how to do it that way. Let me try it a different way. Go out the door and in the window, and you still can unlock the front. So guys, that is how these tests work. That's a cool trick that you can try. There are other tricks where that came from. There's a bunch of different math tricks that you can learn, but mostly, guys, it's as I've been saying all along, the SAT is just a matter of learning how the test works and improving your ability to game it. The ACT is learning how the test works and improving your ability to game it. After all, guys, improvement does come in 3 parts. First of all, do practice questions. You guys spent 4 hours doing that this morning, so kudos to you. Number 2, though, you're not done. Go forward and learn from your mistakes. This is important. You have to figure out what you don't know so that when the next time the SAT gives you the same exact concepts, because they have to, that's the whole point of this test, so they can compare you to some kid in Kentucky taking the test on a different day. It's got to be the same test over and over again, or else they wouldn't be able to compare you. Learn from your mistakes and then write them down somewhere so that the next time you test, you can learn from these mistakes, whether it's a math concept you didn't know, a grammar rule you didn't spot, a wrong answer type you didn't notice. You will see these same basic questions again. That is what standardized means. So guys, that is the way that this works. Okay, so overall tips, specific math tips. The last of this packet is just some stuff about us, the classes that we offer, and the tutoring and our class schedules and stuff like that. Normally, I don't pitch very much in these types of meetings. Normally, I just try to do a great presentation, and if you like it, you guys know where to find me. You can sign up for some stuff. This is obviously a weird time. We're a small business. Our tutors do have some extra time this spring. A bunch of stuff has been canceled, and you know they're looking to help you guys as well. I would say turn this, let us turn this into your advantage. There are 3 ways, guys, that we can help you. Number 1, not only the usual academic support that a lot of our tutors do this time of year, helping somebody keep up on chemistry or pre-calc, but I've heard from some of my families that some of the instruction online through the schools maybe isn't quite up to par of what it would be normally. Maybe some of you guys are feeling that a little bit. And if you're worried, or if you parents are worried that maybe your kids aren't learning as much as they should be right now, maybe they're not learning any math or any science at the moment, we can not only support, we can actually just teach you these subjects. If you want to learn pre-calc this spring, I have a Harvard math graduate who is a school teacher for 10 years who would love to just make you awesome at pre-calc. You want to learn chemistry? I've got a guy who graduated from UCLA and now he's in medical school and that's canceled right now. So he wants to teach you how to be super good at chemistry. We're happy to help if that's something that you guys need for academic support. Also, while you got some time, if you want to just get super freaking good at the SAT, we've got classes online. We've got tutoring online. All of this stuff works super well. Also, this summer, this essay thing is going to be a big deal. We've been doing essay coaching for 10 years. You want to just crush your essay, we can help you with that too. We're here to support you guys, both because we love you and because we're bored. We need you. You guys need us, and we're happy to help. If you guys are looking for anything academic out of the spring or, God forbid, summer, hopefully this will all be over much sooner than that. But that's all I'll say about that, guys. We're here to help. Our information is here on these last couple handout packets, as well as our class schedules, which, I'd love to go back and teach these in person, but we're not going to do that until it's safe, of course. In the meantime, these types of Zoom classes work pretty well. Plus, they can be recorded. I'm going to have this recording of this thing up and running for you guys. If you want to see it or share it with anybody else, I'll send out the link. tomorrow. So without further ado, then I want to get to questions and answers if you guys have any. Now I'm going to unshare my screen so you guys can all see each other. We've got a lot of people in this room. If you want to ask a question, you can either type it into the message, you can unmute yourself and just say, hey, I have a question, or you can put your camera back on and raise your hand. But I want to open this up to anybody that's got any questions and to thank you guys for being here. Is there anything that we haven't covered? Anything else I can help you guys with? The awkward silence that always follows that question is especially deafening in an online room. V, you have a question. Type that or just unmute yourself and ask it. You can unmute yourself by clicking the unmute button, or you can just hold the space bar for a minute. Go ahead, V.
I was wondering if the same thing applies for subject testing. So,
yeah, now the the UCs have always had those be test optional. And that, in fact, where I'm stealing this advice about the SAT and the ACT is what's always been the case with those. The subject tests for the UCs are not required. They're certainly not required this year. Should you take them? They could help. I mean, I always say give it a shot. And if you score badly, just don't submit them. I mean, in a way, that's like why this is so no pressure. Like if you just don't do well on your SAT, then you don't have to submit it. That's actually really cool this year. Same with the subject tests. I would try to take them. I always say take them in May or June because that's when you're the best at AP US history or whatever. If you don't get a chance to do it then, you can do it over the summer or in the fall. But either way, it's not a bad idea to take 2 or 3 of those. They're an hour long, so you can actually do 3 of them all in one day. And then you can submit them if you want to. If they'll bring your grades up or they'll bring your scores up, it can only help.
okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Other questions? Franklin, you asked, Ari's not received her scores yet. Yeah, I sent you guys an email back. You sent yours in a unreadable PDF format, so we need to send your in an Excel version. Maybe you already sent that. If you have, Lisa will be responding to that. Jay says, if we were already registered for the March SAT, are we signed up for the June test date? I believe you are. I think on their website it says they just automatically submitted you. If it's not that, then they've refunded you and then you can still sign up for June. But to make sure, I would just log into your College Board account and see what it says there. It should tell you whether you are registered for June and where you are registered for June. Probably the same location if they're offering it in the same location again, but they can make sure for you. And if you don't want to be or you aren't and you do want to be, you can change that there at collegeboard.com as well. Other questions, everybody? Oh, limited spots for the June test dates. Well, there are always limited spots for every SAT. These rooms do fill up. I haven't heard, I've been checking the College Board's website almost every day. I haven't yet heard whether they will be more limited than usual. I would guess that the SAT is going to try to make them less limited than usual. Now, not by cramming more people into a room, because that's not a good idea right now, but by booking out maybe 3 times as many testing rooms and spreading the kids out more. As I said before, I think the SAT and the ACT are going to get incredibly creative to make these tests happen because they don't want to go out of business. This is like restaurants who are now selling takeout only. Like they don't normally do that, but they are now because they don't want to starve. And the SAT and ACT are, you know, multi-million-dollar companies, and they don't want to lose all of their market share. So yes, there are going to be limited spots. I don't know if it'll be more limited or less limited, but that's something that you would want to look into on the websites as well. My recommendation would just be to sign up for the June test as soon as you can. The worst case scenario is they have to punt that location or that date a little bit further, in which case you'll just be registered for the next one. Other questions?
You don't think they're gonna go FRQ, right? For like standardized tests? Do you think it'll remain?
Oh God, no, no way. No, that defeats the entire purpose of like the SAT standardized model. It would be an incredibly different test like that. So no, you're not going to have to worry about the test format changing on such short notice. They can't change their format without like 5 years of lead time. And, coronavirus is annoying, but it ain't going to last 5 years. So we, won't have to worry about that. No, they will not change the format. The most drastic format change I could possibly see would be trying to do the test online, but then it would be the same test, just online. And I personally don't think they're going to do that because it's just way too easy to cheat on. So I think they're going to try to just have small rooms with like fewer people in them, spaced out, with like lots of sanitary wipes and the proctor in a hazmat suit and other ridiculous images. Noah says, if the AP exams are easier because they're open note, I wouldn't necessarily say they're going to be easier, but we'll say it's shorter. Doesn't that mean national average scores will go up and it would be harder to get a good score? And Noah, that's an excellent question. Yeah, it does mean that if in fact the tests are easier, and I think they will probably be the same, but since now it's open note, obviously, because they can't stop you from doing that. Yeah, I do think that people who actually care will probably turn in slightly better products. That being said, I think the instruction leading up to the AP exam is going to be on average worse. So that could bring some things back down. I also think we're going to get a much higher standard deviation of performance. There are going to be high schools out there where basically they've given up on the AP test at all. And so the kids are going to be completely unprepared. They're going to come in with like no real effort, and there's going to be a lot more really garbage scores. So if like in an average year, it's a bell curve with lots of people getting threes and hardly anybody getting ones and fives, this year it's going to be more like a flat line where you got lots of ones and lots of fives. The colleges are going to know that, and they're going to kind of consider that in a lenient way. So I would try to still write the best essay that you can, try to do the best job that you can. But let's say that you probably would have gotten a 4 anyway, and you still get a 4. Are you going to be hurt by the fact that there's going to be more 5s? I don't think so. I don't think very much. I think colleges are going to continue to look at all of it in the context of the weird situation we're in. So I wouldn't worry too much. Just do the best job you can.
Does that mean that AP scores, they're like weighted less by colleges?
Yes. I think AP scores will be weighted less. I think SAT scores will be weighted less. I think grades will be weighted less. And I think activities will be weighted less because you can't even go freaking outdoors. So what does that leave? Your essay. Your essay is the only thing that will be weighted more this year. So to join our essay class this summer, we're going to have a 7-week class, and it might be online, might be in person, but either way, like that you really want to try to crush this summer. So we're able to help with that if you need us to. Other questions, everybody? Well, if there aren't any, or if you just want to stick around afterwards for a couple minutes and ask your question you're too embarrassed to ask in front of 40 people, and you only want to ask it in front of 3, we'll be here. Otherwise, guys, contact me at any point. Like I said, we're not going anywhere. We're here. I'm stuck in my office a lot. I only go out to walk my toddler and to occasionally get a bite to eat. But we're here, guys. Our tutors are ready.